Alright, hello, my name is James Winton,
I'm Brendan Sanders.
My name's Connor Huber.
and this is our $300 house proposal. So the overview for this project was to design a $300 house that was affordable and meets the necessary requirements for living a full, accessible life. Firstly, we're going to take a look at our poster. Here we have our poster. It goes over the guidelines of what needed to be done. It also includes what we have completed for this project, our brainstorming, some designs for the project as well, and the final model. We're going to go into more detail in this presentation about what's on this poster.
Alright, so we had a few problems to solve throughout this project and the proposal for the house. The first one was our budget. With only being allowed to spend $300 on the project, that was a little rough. We had to make sure that we got the necessary materials, but that we didn't go over the budget to make sure that it was as inexpensive as possible. The second problem was privacy. With the house, kind of like the Dakota Eco Gardens, you're living in a sort of community, but you had to make sure like you had your own living space that was separate from everybody else, that way you could have your own privacy. The third problem was safety. We had to make sure that the house and the people that would be living in it were protected from the natural elements like wind and rain, things like that, to make sure like they'd be safe within their own home. And then finally, our fourth problem was durability, making sure that the house would be able to last for a certain amount of time and be able to sustain itself for as long as possible, and the materials would hold up.
Alright, so brainstorming. So basically we all worked together pretty much the whole time. We planned out what we were going to do and like what jobs we were going to have, and we did a few things at home, but for the most part we just did it together in a classroom. Alright, so this is our 3D rendering of the frame. We use 4x4 posts all the way around, and then we have 2x4s like going around it, 4 feet up, and then another 4 feet up, so it's a total of 8 feet. We did this so we could screw the OSB to the sides. The roof's just basic 2x4s, and then we're going to put metal sheathing over the top for a roof. So this is the outside, the exterior. We have a window, a door that's just made out of OSB, and then the whole outside is just all OSB.
Okay, so for our materials, we use the 4x4 posts as kind of support beams, one in each corner. To support the house, we have 2x4s that are put along the outside as basically as studs in order to hold the OSB as the outside of the house to protect it from the elements. We used wood pallets that came for free to try to keep the budget down. That way it could be used for possibly studs or any other materials that we would need. The OSB is the surrounding outside of the house. The metal roofing is a few panels on top that are all put together to protect the house. We have insulation boards that go on the inside of the OSB, on the inside of the house, that keep it insulated, warm, cold, whenever you want it. We have solar panels on top for electricity to make sure that the house is sustainable and that electricity can be used. We use screws to keep it all together. And then finally we have the light bulb and the socket that are using the electricity, that way people can see inside. This is the list of our budget. So first off, we have our wood, which, as I said before, we used posts, studs, OSB, and pallets. So then we have the size, the quantity, the prices for each, and then the price times the quantity. And then we also have the supplier. We had to go through quite a few suppliers to try to find the cheapest price, but that it would still be a good material to use. That way, we had to go through a few, but all in all, we found the best that we found. The total for wood was $104.90, so it was pretty expensive, but that was the bulk of our materials. After that, we only have one thing for metal. It's just our roofing panel. We had to use 4 of them. They were only 2 feet wide, but 8 feet long, which was perfect as our house was 8 feet wide, 8 feet long. So then we used 4 of those panels to go across, and then that total was $59.92, so pretty inexpensive. And then finally we have our miscellaneous. Insulation, we used 4x8 boards. We had to use 8 of them. We used the boards because they were cheaper and easier to use rather than using like the roll-on insulation that had to be stapled in possibly. The solar we found online on a website. It was the cheapest one for such a good piece of solar that would supply a good amount of electricity. The door would just be extra OSB that was used over from the wood that we would use to surround the house, so that had no cost to it. The window was pretty expensive for how it was, but we had found a good sized window that would still be useful. The light socket and the light bulb both were inexpensive, only $161 and $223. And then finally just screws to hold it all together. And so the total for our miscellaneous was $189.87. And then finally, the grand total was $354.69. So we did actually go around $50 over, but this was after a few weeks of work trying to find the cheapest prices. So this was the best that we could find with using the best materials at that price. So we did go a little over, but all in all, we think that this was the best option that we could use.
Here we have our time log. It was actually really interesting to log our hours and have a visual representation of how much time we spent on this project. In the beginning, we kind of felt like we could kind of breeze through this project, but it turns out that we did spend a lot of time brainstorming and making the designs and going through Revit and SketchUp and making all the models, getting everything the way that we wanted it to be. So here you could see each person's name and then the amount of hours that we completed on that day. A lot of our hours were completed as a group. This was a group project, so we made sure to do the time working on this project together. We did do some work outside of the classroom and by ourselves, but it was also logged in there as well. You can see that some of the numbers are slightly different for each person. That accounts for the time we spent at home doing this. So yeah. And now here we're going to talk about our influence from the Dakota Eco Garden. So when we took the field trip out there to go see the affordable houses, it gave us a really good inspiration on how we should design our house. We knew we wanted to go with the square design with the OSB on the sides, but another idea that we also had was to just drape a tarp over the sides. But in the end, that became too expensive in comparison to the OSB because the tarp would eventually wear away over time and the OSB would last longer. So if this was to be developed in the future, the buyer could have an option of placing a tarp over the OSB for extra weather protection and extra durability. So in conclusion, we believe this design is the most affordable and sustainable for the project guidelines. We feel that the homeless people all over the world could use this design and be content with it. And with the price of only $350, I think this is a really good contender for this project. Thank you.